The first drop of wine didn't fall by accident. It landed with a deliberate crimson splatter, slow, intentional, and cruel. Jessica didn't stumble. She didn't wobble. She stood tall, steady enough to deliver her little performance like an actress who had rehearsed this humiliation 100 times. She tipped her glass forward over Jacob's watercolor painting, his 3 days of effort, his tiny hands carefully blending blues and greens to recreate the lake outside our parents' cabin. It was supposed to be a surprise gift for his grandfather. Now, a violent red stain crawled across the paper like a spreading wound. The shock on Jacob's face didn't come from the mess. It came from the betrayal. Jessica watched the color bleed and smiled a dry, dismissive smile. Honestly, Sarah, he needs to learn. The world doesn't give a damn about little kitty scribbles, and this was taking up the whole table. Her voice was slurred just enough to be dangerous, but sober enough to know exactly what she was doing. She took another lazy sip, then set her glass down directly on the soaked paper, crushing the damp fibers under its base. A soft, ugly laugh slipped out of her. My Uncle Mark slapped his knee, roaring. "Ha! A $50 life lesson. Toughen up or get eaten, kid." The laughter spread like an infection, sharp, mean, contagious. My cousins smirked. My mother forced a shaky giggle, the kind people make when they're trying to keep everything from exploding. The room felt smaller, meaner. And Jacob, my sweet, gentle 6-year-old Jacob, didn't make a sound. He stared at the ruined painting, at the swollen paper buckling beneath the wash of red. His small body curled in on itself as if he were physically shrinking, trying to disappear. His hands trembled, his lips pressed together in a tight white line, his shoulders locked, every muscle tensed in silent panic. He wasn't looking for comfort, he was searching for invisibility. And in that unbearable silence, something in me cracked open. I saw exactly what was happening to him because it had happened to me. I recognized it, the freezing, the shrinking, the desperate attempt to become small enough that the predator loses interest. It wasn't discipline, it was conditioning. It was training him to accept humiliation as normal. My breath hitched, but I didn't rush to clean the mess or rescue the painting. I didn't reach for a towel. I didn't fuss or shout or apologize for my son's existence the way I'd been trained to my entire life. Instead, I watched him learn the lesson Jessica had just drilled into him. Your pain is entertainment, and your silence is expected. I felt the invisible chain around his throat. The same chain I had worn for 29 years. Watching it pass from mother to child felt like watching a curse being inherited. Something cold and sharp settled inside me, clarity, not rage. A calculation, a shifting of plates beneath the earth. I rose from my chair. The sound of the wooden legs scraping across the floor was loud, jarring, slicing through the laughter like a blade. Every head turned. I moved around the table and stepped between Jacob and Jessica. I didn't even glance at the painting. I looked directly at her, the woman who had devoured our family's peace for decades, and I felt no trembling in my voice when I spoke. You enjoyed that? It wasn't a question. It was a diagnosis. Jessica rolled her eyes dramatically and poured herself another glass, her movements loose and practiced. Oh, stop it, Sarah. It's paper. You baby him too much. Someone needs to prepare him for the real world. A sharp silence followed, thick enough to choke on. I could feel my father watching me. I could feel the old tension in the room shifting, the years of swallowed truths pressing against their cages. My mother broke first. She rushed forward, not to comfort Jacob, not to acknowledge the cruelty, but to wipe the table clean as though the wood's well-being mattered more than the child. Her voice pitched into her usual frantic chirp. Jessica, you're so clumsy. Sarah, don't make that face. It was just an accident. We can buy him a nice coloring book, one with stickers. That was the moment my pity for her evaporated. She wasn't confused or helpless. She was addicted to pretending that everything was fine. She would sacrifice anyone, even her grandson, to keep the illusion of family harmony intact. Jessica leaned back smugly, emboldened. Exactly. He should be grateful, being soft is a choice. My father stood up then. Not abruptly, slowly, deliberately, the way a structure collapses after years of bearing too much weight. The room seemed to hold its breath as he walked toward the fireplace and stared at the wooden sign hanging above it. Family is forever. He touched it once, then turned to face my mother. You wiped the table, he said, voice low and thunderous. But you didn't check on the boy. My mother blinked, startled. David, you're being dramatic. I'm just trying to. You're trying to maintain a peace that never existed. The room went still. His hand moved to his wedding band, twisting it slowly, painfully. He pulled it off with the help of dish soap from the sink, wrapping years of marriage around a moment of decision, and walked back to the table. The band glinted in his hand for a second before he dropped it onto the ruined painting. The dull thud felt like the closing of a vault door. I am done protecting you, he said, his voice calm and final. The silence that followed was so complete it felt like the world had stopped breathing. Jessica barked a laugh, but it rang hollow. Are you seriously doing this over some kid art? You're pathetic. She didn't know, not yet, that the ground beneath her feet had already begun to crumble. And my father was about to show her just how deep the fractures in our family went. Jessica's confidence began to crack the moment my father didn't look away from her. She had always thrived on being the loudest voice in the room, the storm no one dared challenge. But now, the power she used as her shield was slipping through her fingers, and she sensed it, like an animal noticing the shift in pressure before an earthquake. My father didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His quiet was more violent than any yelling could have been. He looked at the wine-stained painting again, not with anger, but with a grief that made the air feel heavy. Then he turned to Jacob. Come here, buddy. Jacob walked slowly, uncertain, shrinking into himself. My father kneeled down to his level, ignoring the ruined art, ignoring the mess on the table, ignoring everyone who still sat frozen in complicity. He placed a hand on Jacob's trembling shoulder. Does this make you feel bad? Jacob's throat bobbed. He nodded once, tiny, careful, like he feared even admitting his hurt would cause another wave of mocking laughter. It was the kind of nod you see in children who have already learned that their pain is inconvenient. My father inhaled sharply, as if that single nod carried the weight of every mistake he had ever made. Then he stood and turned to my mother and Jessica, two women who had dominated the emotional climate of our family for decades. You both knew exactly what you were doing, he said quietly, and you enjoyed it. Jessica scoffed. Oh my God, it was just a joke. You people are so dramatic. It stopped being a joke when he stopped breathing, my father replied. Jessica blinked. He's breathing. He wasn't, he said. Not for a moment, and you didn't notice. My mother stepped in front of him, her voice desperate and shaky. David, you can't take this so seriously. Jessica didn't mean. He cut her off without raising a hand. I'm not talking to you right now. That single sentence stunned her into silence. For the first time in my life, I saw fear, not of violence but of truth, flare across her face. She had spent her entire marriage cushioning herself with denial, and my father had finally removed the padding. Jessica forced a laugh. You're acting like I murdered someone. You assassinated something, my father said. That's for certain. The room went still again, as if everyone feared the next word might shatter whatever fragile balance remained. My mother clutched the back of a chair, her knuckles turning white. My cousins glanced at each other nervously, suddenly unsure which side was safe. But my father wasn't done. He walked to the drawer near the kitchen counter and pulled out a thick envelope, one I recognized instantly. A legal envelope. A sealed one. My breath caught in my throat because I knew exactly what was inside. He slapped the envelope onto the table with a dull, final thud. I've had this prepared for months. My mother paled. David, what is that? A boundary, he said simply. A divorce, Jessica mocked. For what? For not babysitting your grandkids' feelings. No, he said, for years of enabling abuse. The word hung in the air, abuse, heavy and undeniable. My mother's eyes filled with tears. "David, please, don't do this here, we have guests." "And yet you allowed our guests to humiliate our grandson in our home," he replied. "This is exactly the place to do it." Jessica rolled her eyes. "Wow, so now I'm the family abuser, pathetic." "No," my father said slowly, "you're not the only one." My mother made a soft, strangled sound. "David." "You laughed," he said. "You laughed while a child was humiliated, and you told us all to pretend it wasn't happening. You've done that my entire life. You did it to Sarah, you did it to me, and now you've done it to our grandson." Her hands shook. I was trying to keep the peace. "There is no peace," he said. "There is only your fear of conflict, and you feed it with sacrifice, always someone else's dignity." Jessica snorted. "You sound insane." My father looked at her with a cold, unsettling calm. "You are a grown woman who derives pleasure from making children cry, and you think I'm insane." Jessica opened her mouth, but nothing came out. For the first time, she didn't have a snarky comeback ready. I saw something flicker across her expression, confusion, then offense, and finally, something she had never experienced in this house before: consequences. My Uncle Mark, who had laughed the loudest earlier, was suddenly very quiet. He tried to salvage his dominance. "David, come on, it was a joke. A kid needs to toughen up." My father turned to him sharply. "Did toughening up make you a better man, or did it make you cruel?" Mark's jaw tightened. "Don't talk to me like that. I'm talking to you exactly like you've talked to every child in this family. For years." Mark's eyes darted to the others, seeking backup, but no one moved. His wife shifted uncomfortably. His own daughter looked away, her face tight with embarrassment. My father continued, his voice low but steady. "You all normalize this behavior because you're terrified of being the next target, but I am done participating in the performance." Jessica crossed her arms. "So what now? You're going to punish me?" "No," he said. "I'm going to protect the people who deserve protection." He walked over to Jacob again and picked up the ruined painting with the tender care of someone handling something sacred. The wine had soaked deeper into the paper now, the edges curling inward like burned parchment. The colors twisted into something pained and distorted. My father held it up. "This," he said, "is not the problem. This can be remade." His gaze shifted back to Jessica, sharp and piercing. "But what you did to him cannot be undone." Jessica scoffed again, but it sounded weaker this time. "You're all insane. You're acting like I committed a felony." "You committed something more corrosive," my father said. "Psychological warfare disguised as humor." The room echoed with a deep, collective inhalation. I could feel Jessica's certainty unraveling thread by thread. She had always relied on dismissal, on the idea that no one would dare confront her seriously. But now, she was trapped in the very silence she had demanded from everyone else. And still, my father wasn't finished. He looked at me, really looked. Not with expectation or disappointment, just a long, quiet acknowledgement of all the years he hadn't spoken up. "I'm sorry," he said softly. My chest tightened. I hadn't expected that. Not here, not now. Not after decades of being minimized, pushed aside, overlooked while Jessica's cruelty was treated as just her personality. He continued, "I let this happen to you. I let them treat you like this. I let your mother pretend everything was fine. I let the cycle continue, and I am ending it today." Jessica barked a laugh that sounded more like a choke. "You can't just end a family." "You ended it," my father said, "the moment you treated a child's suffering as entertainment." He took Jacob's hand. "We're leaving." Silence exploded like a shockwave. My mother reached for him. "David, please don't go, not like this." He gently stepped out of her reach. "I have stayed silent for decades. This is the only way left." Jessica stood abruptly. "So you're just going to walk away from all of us?" "No," my father said. "I'm walking away from the version of this family that you created." Then he turned to me. "Sarah, take Jacob to the car. I'm coming with you." It wasn't a question. It wasn't a request. It was a declaration. And for the first time in my life, he was choosing us. As I took Jacob's hand and walked toward the door, I didn't look back at Jessica or Mark or my mother. I didn't need to. Because something told me the real reckoning, the one Jessica never saw coming, was only just beginning. Mark's voice was the first to break the tension, loud and desperate in its attempt to reclaim control. "David, sit down. You're overreacting. You always were dramatic. You're just mad because Jessica pointed out the truth. Your daughter is soft and her kid is even softer." Jessica smirked at that, swirling her wine like a queen commanding her court. "Honestly, Dad, this is ridiculous. You're letting Sarah manipulate you. She always plays the victim and you fall for it every single time." My mother stepped forward, her hands fluttering like frantic birds. "David, please, let's not do this tonight. It's Christmas Eve. We should be grateful we're all together." "Together," my father said quietly. "We haven't been together in years. We've only been contained." His words rippled through the room, unsettling, undeniable. Jacob tugged at my sleeve. His eyes were wet, but he still hadn't cried. That silence from a child is not strength. It is trauma calcifying. I crouched down and whispered to him, "It's okay. You did nothing wrong, you hear me? Nothing." But his gaze drifted slowly, toward the wine stain, toward the painting, toward Jessica. Mark snorted. "Great, now she's teaching him to blame us. Classic Sarah, perpetual martyr." Jessica lifted her glass as if making a toast. "Well, cheers to that." My father turned and looked directly at her. "Jessica." She paused. "I want you to apologize to Jacob," he said. Her laugh sliced through the air like a blade. "Oh, please, I'm not apologizing to a 6-year-old. He'll live." My father's expression didn't change, but something in the room did. The temperature seemed to drop a few degrees. "I didn't ask." Jessica rolled her eyes again, but for the first time I saw something flicker, uncertainty. A hairline crack in her confidence. Mark rose, placing himself between my father and his daughter like a defensive wall. "You're not going to gang up on her. She didn't do anything wrong." "She humiliated a child," my father said simply. Mark barked a laugh. "Kids get humiliated every day, builds character." "And that is why you shouldn't be anyone's father," my father replied calmly. Mark's smile vanished. He took a step forward. "Say that again." My father didn't blink. "You abuse everyone around you because you mistake cruelty for strength. You think laughing at a child makes you powerful, but it only exposes your own weakness." A vein throbbed in Mark's temple, his fists clenched. For a split second, violence shimmered in the air. And then Jessica spoke. "Stop, both of you, this is stupid." She tried to wave it off, but her voice had lost its edge. The smug confidence was thinning. The room, once her playground, had turned into a courtroom, and she could feel the jury shifting. My mother saw the power slipping away and lunged to grab it back. "Enough, all of you. Sarah, this is your fault. You overreacted. You made this ugly. You could have just cleaned the table." Something inside me snapped. Slowly, deliberately, I stood up straight. "For 29 years, I said softly, you've blamed me for everything. Every toxic choice, every attack, every humiliation. I was too emotional, too sensitive, too dramatic, too much of a burden, but never, not once, have you held the abusers accountable." My mother pressed a trembling hand to her chest. "Abuse, don't be ridiculous, they're family." "Yes," I whispered, "that's the problem." Jessica scoffed loudly. "Oh, please, everybody heard you screaming at Jacob last month because he spilled juice. But now you're the saint. Give me a break." I turned to her slowly. "You're right," I yelled, and I apologized to him. I told him I was wrong because correcting my mistakes doesn't threaten me. Accountability doesn't scare me, but it terrifies you. Her smirk faltered. Mark muttered under his breath. "She thinks she's some kind of hero now." "No," I said, stepping forward. "I'm not a hero, I'm a mother, and that means I won't let my son grow up thinking that silence is safety." Jessica's eyes narrowed. "What are you going to do? Run away again? Cut off the family? Pretend we don't exist?" I felt the weight of that question. Every memory, every wound, every betrayal pressed against me like ghosts. My father answered before I could. "She's not the one leaving," he said quietly. "We are." The room froze. My mother's mouth dropped open. "We? David, what are you?" My father ignored her. He walked to the coat rack, picked up his jacket and keys, and came to stand beside me and Jacob. "I have protected the wrong people for far too long," he said, "but not anymore." Mark let out a furious laugh. "You think you can walk out of your own house?" My father looked him dead in the eye. "Watch me." He then picked up a folder from the mantel, a folder I hadn't noticed before, and placed it gently into my hands. "This is everything," he said. "Documents, statements, proof, years of incidents, witness accounts, security footage, financial inconsistencies. Your mother didn't know I kept records. I was waiting for the right moment to expose the truth, and now I know exactly who deserves justice." Jessica's face turned the color of ash. "What the hell are you talking about?" My father's voice was ice. "The courts." A stunned silence fell like a guillotine blade. My mother staggered forward. "David, you can't." "I can," he said quietly, "and I will." Jessica's hands tightened around her glass. "You're bluffing. You're trying to scare us." My father reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and calmly dialed a number. A voice answered immediately on speaker. "This is Attorney Ellis. Are we proceeding?" Jessica's wine glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor. "Yes," my father said, "we are proceeding." He hung up, and that was when the screaming began. But it was too late. The match had already been struck, and the fire was coming for all of them. The screaming didn't stop. It rose, sharp and panicked, bouncing off the walls as if the house itself was rejecting the truth. Jessica grabbed her phone, furiously tapping at the screen. "I'm calling the police. This is harassment. You can't just threaten people with lawyers on Christmas." My father didn't flinch. "Call them. I'll hand them the evidence myself." Mark's eyes narrowed. "What evidence? You're bluffing. You're just angry because your precious little granddaughter finally got put in her place." "Grandson," my father corrected sharply. "And no, I'm angry because I let people like you teach my family that cruelty is normal. That ends tonight." Jessica's composure unraveled like a poorly stitched seam. She stumbled forward, pointing a trembling finger at me. "This is your fault. You poisoned him against us. You've always been jealous." Her voice broke. The words choked on her own panic. "For what?" I asked quietly. "Your parents' approval, their money, their control. I walked away years ago. And the only thing I regret is that I didn't take my son with me sooner." "You think you're better than us," Mark shouted. "You think you're some kind of martyr." "No," I said. "I think I finally stopped being afraid." Jessica's face twisted with rage. "Oh, don't pretend you're brave. You're nothing without this family. You're weak. You've always been weak." My father stepped between us. "No, Jessica, she wasn't weak. She was loyal. She tried. She trusted you. And you broke that trust every single time." Jessica laughed harshly. "So what? Now you want to punish us legally, sue us. For what? Ruining a stupid painting." My father reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a flash drive. He placed it on the table beside the ruined painting. "No," he said, "for everything." Mark inhaled sharply. Jessica paled. "What's that?" she demanded. "Proof," my father answered. "Of your behavior, your drinking, your aggression, your harassment, your threats, your manipulation, the way you've treated every member of this family for over 15 years. Jessica's voice cracked. "You've been spying on me." "No," my father said. "I've been documenting my own household. You just happen to expose yourself in every recording." My mother gasped. "David, you didn't." "Yes," he said simply. "I did." Mark lunged forward, but my father held up one hand, calm, commanding, immovable. "Before you try anything stupid, know that copies of these files have already been sent to Attorney Ellis, as well as 2 other people who will release them if anything happens to me or Sarah." Jessica stumbled back, collapsing into a chair. Her bravado dissolved completely. You can't do this." "I already have," my father replied. My mother finally snapped, her composure cracking open like a brittle shell. "Why? Why would you destroy this family?" He looked at her with tired, heavy eyes. "I'm not destroying anything. I'm exposing what was already broken." The house fell silent again, the kind of silence that comes after a storm has ripped the roof off. Then Jacob stepped forward. My son, silent, trembling, brave. He looked directly at Jessica with those wide, wounded eyes and said softly, "Why did you do that to my painting?" His voice was so small, so raw, so honest. Jessica covered her face, but not out of shame, out of fear. Her hands shook violently. "I didn't mean." "Yes, you did," Jacob whispered. Something in that moment shifted permanently. A child's truth pierced through every lie in the room. My father knelt down to Jacob's level, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You didn't deserve that," he told him, "and you never have to accept that again. Do you understand?" Jacob nodded slowly. I felt my throat tighten. For the first time in years, I wasn't alone. My son wasn't alone. We walked toward the door, my father, Jacob, and me. But we didn't leave. Not yet. I turned back. Jessica looked like a trapped animal. Mark looked ready to attack but unable to. My mother hovered in the middle, torn between denial and collapse. "Listen carefully," I said, my voice steady and cold. "This is the last time you will ever speak to me or my son. You don't call, you don't visit, you don't ask questions, you don't send messages. You do accidentally show up anywhere near us." Mark barked, "You can't cut us out." "I'm not cutting you out," I said. "I'm protecting my child from you." Jessica shook her head wildly. "Sarah, you can't take Dad's side. You're twisting everything." My father interrupted her, voice like iron. "She isn't taking my side. I'm finally taking hers." My mother cried out, "But family is forever." "No," I said, taking Jacob's hand. "Family is earned." Then my father delivered the final blow. Quiet, devastating, irreversible. "I filed the restraining orders yesterday." The room imploded. My mother screamed. Jessica collapsed. Mark swore violently. But the law was already in motion. The case was already open. The evidence was already secured. And we were already free. My father opened the front door, letting the cold winter air sweep in. "Sarah, take Jacob to the car. I'll be right behind you." I nodded. Jacob squeezed my hand. The two of us walked out into the night, away from the noise, away from the poison, away from the people who had mistaken cruelty for love. I buckled Jacob into his seat, my fingers trembling not from fear, but from release. He leaned forward and whispered, "Mom, are we safe now?" I kissed his forehead. "Yes, we're safe now." My father stepped outside, closing the door behind him with a quiet finality. The shouting inside faded into muffled chaos. He looked at me, his face lined with exhaustion and relief. "I should have done this years ago." I shook my head softly. "You did it now, that's enough." He nodded, then walked toward his own car. But before he got in, he looked back at the house, our former cage. "Let the law handle the rest," he said. And with that, he turned the key and drove away from the wreckage he'd spent decades trying to repair. The restraining orders would take effect within hours. The legal cases would unfold relentlessly. The evidence would speak louder than any of their lies. Justice was already working. And for the first time in my life, I felt untouchable. Untouchable. Unshakable. Free.